This is fun. Okay, for the natural hurdles, but we get through
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So we're here today at Tower Bridge, London, and I'm sitting here with Koyesha. And thank you so much, Koyesha, for being on Viral Rules. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here. And it's the first time that I'm actually trying to record outdoors with a lot of uncontrolled environment, so this is going to be like a fun one. So first of all, thank you so much for even suggesting the idea. That was really, I appreciate you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy
Yeah.
reconnecting with you and having soulful conversations. So looking forward to today.
That's so sweet. So I'll quickly get into it. That the reason that I wanted to speak to you is because, like, first of all, we've known each other since we were kids. We went to the same school, elementary, and all of that. And then, you know, 28 years later, that's been a long time. You see how people evolve. You see the things that they do, and you get inspired. So you are definitely somebody like that. Obviously, when we were kids in totally different context, and today for me, you're a global youth leader, which is how I would like to define you. But if I have to ask you that, okay, according to Koyesha, who is Koyesha Mukherjee? So how would you define that?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question. I think where I am right now in my life, I would definitely describe myself as someone who is carving new paths, going with the flow, and trying to set an example. Um, I very much believe, like how my name is quite unique, I would also want to make my life a way that defines uniqueness in every aspect of it. And I think that's what Koyesha stands for, just standing out of the crowd, being unique.
Okay.
And I think so far in the last few years of my life, I have been able to do that in whichever small way that I've chosen to make my life the way it is right now. Whether it is just decisions I took to, I guess, move abroad, came to study, or just choosing a new career path, or even just choosing a stream that was not mainstream, especially coming from a South Asian culture where when you are a good student, it's kind of expected that you would go towards the mainstream engineering or medical. But the fact that in my teenage years itself, I figured a passion where I knew which was my calling, and that's what I wanted to do and go for, despite what people around me were suggesting. I still remember there was the teacher back in school who said, "Oh, but you are a good student, and you should be taking computer science. Like, why would you take economics?" And this is back in class 8 when we were choosing our stream for the ninth standard. And I felt, but I've studied computers and I think I want to do something different, and I just went with it. And that, I think that was one of the turning points in my life that has defined what I've done for the future years, and so I kind of set the stones for it. And I think I've never regretted it. Honestly, it's just I just went with my calling, and it's brought me where I am today. And I've loved every bit of it. Obviously, it has all its ups and downs, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later today. But I think just being true to who I am and recognizing what my strengths are and what my natural calling is what has helped me set a different trajectory to what is normally done in our culture, and kind of setting, hopefully, a good example of how to do something that really matters to you, and then setting an example for others, as in just not in terms of academics, but also career paths, like you said, just being a young diplomat. And I've never had a role model to look up to growing up as to this could also be a career choice. I mean, of course, people working in the government and civil service and that, but at this age, and then being a minority in this country as a South Asian brown girl, with no connections or networks, but just making it solely on merit, um, hopefully has given a lot of people ideas and examples of what they can also choose for themselves, and just think outside the box, which I think is the key kind of defining bottom line in my life.
That's amazing. So you mentioned a point which was that like you figured out quite early that economics, like economics is your calling, and that's what you want to pursue. what was it like there? Like what about it interested you? Because today you're a senior policy advisor with the UK government, but then back when you were, you said you found that interest. What was that interest? What did it look like?
Wow, that takes me back to more than 10 years. But I think the main thing that attracted me at that stage when I was trying to choose which stream to go ahead with is I think I've always loved that poem by The Road Not Taken, where I was just curious to see what it is to just traverse a new road where people are not talking about it, not taking that road. So I just wanted to find out why is that the case? Why is everyone taking the well-trodden road but
Yeah,
not the
yeah,
other one?
yeah.
So I said, let's be the first visitor on that road and see what it feels like. I mean, there will always be, I might fail. There might be
Yeah.
plan Bs and options
Yeah.
always there. It's not the end of the world. So just let's try it. And then I'm glad I tried. I'm glad I took the risk. So I think taking that risk without having any kind of role model or example to look up to was definitely, I think, needed courage and bravery at that point. But I've had very supportive parents, and I'm really grateful for that. They encouraged me. They never stopped me from doing what I wanted to do. So I had the support from them, and I felt like let's just do it. So, and when I started it, I just realized this is it. Like this is what my calling is. This is what my passion is. I mean, economics is everything kind of connected to the real world, and you can see how you can contribute to making a difference in reality by just kind of getting into the details of the logic, the practicality, and everything that economics stands for. So I don't want to go into explaining that, but basically the way that it was connected to making sense of the world is what kind of stuck with me. And I then started to think along the lines of, okay, what is it that I can do, having kind of specialized in the subject in future. And when you're looking at options as young as a kind of teenage kid back then, I was like, wow, this sounds cool, being a special economic advisor to the prime minister or in the government. And I was like, this kind of sounds cool. Why don't I kind of go ahead with this and see what it feels like? So I just wanted to do that since then. And then, yeah, life happened and it brought me around doing what I've always wanted to do. And then, yeah, loved every bit of it since then.
That's amazing. And yeah, like you mentioned, a very interesting point that the family support was always there. Like, because one thing which is not really spoken about that much, that when you try to do things that are, say, beyond or outside of convention, it gets very lonely because, as you said, there's not a lot of representation, and I'll come to that at a later point of this conversation. But at that point, what was your environment like? Can you give us a little bit more into what did that support look like? And when somebody, for example, who's also in a sort of thought more, like your teacher, for example, she is somebody you would look up to and take advice from, but at the same time it's also your parents. So when somebody's telling you, actually, you should be doing this, and you're like, no, I want to do this. So your environment matters a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good part for me was that I had a really good mix of people, mentors, parents, elders around me at that time. So even if there was this one person who told me, "Oh, but you shouldn't do this," I had maybe an outnumbered number of people around me who said, "No, do this. See what it feels like." I did have a couple of kind of mentors, and my mom is a teacher herself, so she obviously was quite well connected with her, alumni students who were, doing different things, or just kind of even talking to different people who were in the field I wanted to take up and having those conversations with them and getting an idea of what does the future look like if I take up this stream. So obviously I had to do that bit of research by just talking to other teachers in economics who are doing this on a daily basis and could give me an idea of what the subject looked like, what are the future career options. But at that stage, no one talks about becoming a policy advisor or an economic advisor. All they could say was, yeah, well, there's good prospect. You can make fair amount of money, decent money. You can do civil services or banking or finance and commerce, but no one really spoke about what exactly you could do in those fields. It was quite generic and high level. So I think ultimately all of us obviously carve our own path once we get into something. No one can ultimately define what is it that you should be doing or what is right for you. So that was very much up to me and the kind of decisions and choices I made down the line. But at that point, I think, like I said, I'm just extremely grateful that I've always had parents who kind of supported me, never forced me to do anything or do it their way or anything. They were very much kind of open for me to make my choices, but then also supported me where I wanted the help or where I was confused and not sure and uncertain and underconfident. And you remember me back from school, like I've always been an introvert. I was not so much too into, talking to people. I had a very kind of limited set of friends and just being close to them. I found it really difficult to open up. So, but I've always been very close to my parents in childhood. So I could have conversations with them that I couldn't have with even any of my friends at that point. So just having those open and honest conversations with them and sharing with them the fact that I'm scared and I'm not sure and everyone else is doing computer science. So what if, in future it doesn't work out and I kind of lag behind? And obviously I've always been a hardworking student, and um, it, again, they never forced me to go and get the highest marks in some subject or become the top of your class. It was just, and I don't think I worked towards those results. It's just I always gave my 100% in everything I did, and the outcomes just kind of followed as a consequence. So I think it's just like the Gita says, "Karm karo, phal ki chinta mat karo." So I was just very focused and kind of, okay, this is the task, this is what I need to do, these are the resources to help action it. And I just did that. And I just saw my next step. I wasn't worrying about 10 steps later, am I going to get that award or am I going to get that, mark? Of course, that mattered, but as a second priority, that was not like, waking up every day, oh, I have to get like this 100 in this subject, so let's get to study. That's not what drove me, which is why I think I was so always, I guess, academically inclined and kind of making that more into a career as well. So yeah, I think my parents saw through my strengths. They knew this is what would be good for me. So when I was lacking that confidence, they understood that and they supported me and gave me the encouragement I think that I needed at that time to just go ahead with that decision. And then just see what it's like, because I think they just had that confidence that maybe whatever I do I will be good at it, given the kind of trajectory at that point so far. So yeah, I think I'm definitely very grateful and blessed to have had a set of parents who have supported me all throughout, and that really makes a lot of difference.
That does 100%. Pretty cool, man. So, you mentioned something about, you were like, karm karo, phal ki chinta mat karo, which is basically like, you just focus on what you can do, what's under your control, and don't be bothered about the outcomes. But interestingly, that did lead to many, cool outcomes. Like recently, you were representing India as a whole, and at the India Youth Forum as a young global leader, which is why I even got interested. That okay, this is so lovely, because when we were growing up, we didn't see a lot of that. So that, of course, that there's like a whole conversation that we can get into just about that. But what I want to ask you is that, a what according to you have been like your biggest achievements in terms of representation, that like at this point we know that there is a certain responsibility that we have. So in that context, what do you think that okay, I've done this, which has sort of carved the path a little bit for somebody who wants to follow this path or be inspired? So that's one question. I'll ask the rest as well.
Sure. I think that inner transformation in me happened when I probably got out of school and into college. That's when I started coming out of my shell and really like being independent in every way possible. Because until then, I think everything was obviously in the comfort zone and everything's taken care of. But the moment you obviously step out of house, and I think that's probably true for everyone, when you have to make those decisions for yourself and all of that, you just then try to get to realize what your other strengths are as well, beyond anything that you've been acquainted to so far. So for me in college, the first achievement there was just being recognized for my writing flair and kind of leadership skills, which was a hidden thing in me. I mean, writing, I think I was good at in school as well, but the leadership skills was something I wasn't aware of until I took up voluntary leadership positions as student council secretary, or kind of leading on societies of creative writing and stuff, and then kind of getting recognized with a gold medal for someone from a very small town, and then you're competing with all these like exceptionally talented people from a big metropolitan city. That was my first step of confidence, I think, into the world, because that made me realize that I have been underestimating myself all this while. Like, I didn't know I could do so much. I could, take up a very position of responsibility and still be successful at it and give my best and get others to know more about me and making myself more visible, as they say. So I think that was the first step, and that's when I realized, oh wow. So I think this is also some more of what I want to do. And so then the following year, when after completing my undergrad in Calcutta, when I moved abroad, and there as well, I was constantly looking out for opportunities to get more leadership exposure. And so I did a bunch of stuff there as well, which is volunteering at local British schools and then representing India there and talking about India and culture and things like that. And again, other kind of bits and pieces of work here and there. And again, just it's been a journey of a growth of confidence, I would say, that eventually has led me to this young diplomat position that you mentioned, where I was recently representing India on that panel where I was talking about what young leaders can do in today's world to bring about transformation in not just politics and economics, but it's wider than that. It's having a say in the decision making of our future, the future that we all will be jointly living and contributing towards. And I think that's what my current kind of position in my job has made me realize, that I feel so empowered, like as a South Asian minority woman here, being able to make policy decisions, to advising ministers and speaking to governments and embassy representatives of different countries around the world. Again, it's sometimes I kind of pinch myself to believe that this is all true, because someone who didn't kind of talk at all back in school, coming to a position here where all you have to do is communicate and influence seniors and do all of these like difficult conversations and negotiations with very important people within the UK or outside. So yeah, like I said, it's just step by step confidence and the strengths have continued to prune itself and kind of brought me to where I am. But just being in that panel as well earlier this year made me realize that this is the kind of example I want to set for people. It's not so much for my personal achievements. It's not about the fact that you're celebrating me or my strengths. It's about the fact that I represent a culture, I represent a language, and I want that to be an example of why people like me from my country or from any country around the world who has any hope of being in this kind of field gets an idea that there are these career options you can take up and make a difference in the world. Because the moment you do that, you realize what an empowering position you are at, where you can change lives, you can influence people and influence decision making of a country at a macro level. I mean, yeah, we can think about the differences it has made at a micro level and all of that, but I think what matters is how you are shaping the future that we are all going to work towards, whether it's us or our future generations. And having a say in that as young people is so important, because we can all crib and criticize however much we want to, but if we don't participate in bringing about that change, then it's a battle lost at the end of the day. So I feel like having got that opportunity, I'm really grateful that I've got that, and hopefully being able to show others a path as well that will be followed by hopefully other young leaders to come in the future.
So it makes me curious that as somebody who's a young diplomat who has a say, like you said, in things that can at a macro level affect our collective future, what according to you is the most important thing that as youth we all need to start focusing more on? And it could be more than one, but from a policy, from a diplomat point of view, what do you think at a macro level is sort of, I wouldn't say lacking, but we need to consciously pay more attention to?
I think it starts with the first steps, actually identifying what your interests are, and really, if that is your passion, then forging ahead with that and finding a way tying that into policy making so that your ideas and opinions have an outcome or contribution in the real world. And like you said, it doesn't have to be in one particular area of policy. Policy is everything. It can be science, it can be tech, and the world is about digital right now. And then there's also environment and climate change, and that's one area I'm also very passionate about.
Yeah.
So it's a host of factors, host of areas that can kind of encompass when we talk about policy. So it doesn't have to be particularly what I'm like doing in economics or anything. And even in any government for that matter, in any country, we have so different departments catering to different needs of society and the larger economic landscape. So it really just starts with your kind of being true to yourself and trying to reflect and introspect what your interests are, what your key areas of strengths are, where you really want to make a difference in the world, and then using your set of skills and expertise and strengths to bringing about that change. I think for a lot of people, what I have seen so far in the people I've networked with or met is that people do have interests, but they might not necessarily have the kind of energy or strength that is required to pull it off in the long run. So I guess passion then just fizzles out in the process of trying to implement it in reality. And I don't blame anyone for that. I mean, I'm sure I've had phases where I've doubted what I'm doing and if that it's really is making a difference or is it even worth it. But I think those are the moments that you should realize that if it's feeling uncomfortable, you are getting close to doing and making a difference. Because when you are going through those phases of kind of self-doubt and kind of asking yourself why this is important, those are the moments where you should carry on. Those are the moments where you should push through, because that's where you shouldn't give up. And I think it's a big mistake if people just kind of give up thinking that they can't see the tangible outcomes of what they are trying to do. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to be patient. You have to give it a chance at the end of the day to see the kind of outcome that you want to see. For me, like, I'm only doing these kind of panels and things 5 years after I started working. So you have to build a set of kind of experience, and that set of experience includes failures and kind of moments of mistakes, and that's when you share that with the world, because the world is not there to just look at the good parts and the achievements and the success. They want to see how you fell and how you got up, and that's the message that will help people and kind of give them the strength they need when they are going through a difficult time in life. So yeah, it's a journey really, and to be able to be resilient, I think, is really the key that I have learned in my journey. Definitely, that just stick through and do what you're doing, stay focused on your goals, and like I said earlier, just kind of focusing on the next step instead of the whole staircase is something that is really the key in your kind of daily life to work towards what you are dreaming of.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I want to quickly come back to the thing that we spoke about, the representation bit. So why do you think, for you personally, it was important? No, let me try to reframe that. What I'm trying to ask is that since we didn't have it, like, me and you, we both grew up in a small town where there was very little point of reference and all. And with everything that you're saying, that, like, be resilient, and all these narratives sort of tie together, because no matter what you're doing in life, these are basic soft skills and, core values that help you sort of move forward. So now, with that context, what is representation for you? Like, what does it mean for you, and why is it so important for you?
I think the key part of representation is, again, coming back to the whole point of setting an example for others, because by representing a culture or a language or a community in a setting where you see less of those people around you or kind of role models who have done that before, you don't realize the power that you have in your hands, of the difference that you can make. And the difference doesn't have to be at a kind of gigantic global level or national level. I mean, it's great if you can do that, but even on a smaller scale, if you can just give somebody hope that, if you do this, you can also do this, that's what matters at that level as well. So I think making yourself visible is the key aspect of representation, because, for example, for me, because I didn't have a role model, I was always living in that kind of uncertainty and anxiousness that will this work out? Where will this lead to? What's the end path of this road and what's the outcome? So I think I can make others' lives a bit easier now for those who want to follow this path, to know that there will be a good outcome if you go down this road. It goes back to that first decision of which road are you taking. At least I've traveled so far on this road and I've realized there are also good parts to this road. It doesn't always have to be what other people are doing, and just because the majority are using that road, it's the right decision to take. So getting out of that herd mentality, and yes, exactly, and trying to carve your own path, and building that confidence to be able to walk on your chosen path is where representation helps you. Because if someone does it before you, it automatically builds up that confidence that, okay, if she did it, I can do it too. And I think that is where representation matters, and that is why I am really passionate about wanting to see more female representation, especially in the field that I am in economics and analysis and data and numbers. I mean, there are still days in my workplace where I'm in a meeting setting where it's all just white men, and I'm explaining numbers to them and pushing policy ideas to them. And I keep thinking to myself, where are all the women? I mean, okay, I get it. People might have this maths phobia or numbers phobia, whatever, but that can't be everyone. I'm sure there are also people who are interested in this field, but why are we not seeing them at that level? Why don't we see more female representation at higher decision-making levels and senior leaders team as part of that, making in boardrooms, making the big decisions for companies, for governments, for countries, whichever field it is. But the numbers are still not telling us the story that we want to hear, and they're all towards the favor of the majority, and which is why I'm so much about taking the road less traveled by, because we want more people to be represented and talking more about their respective roads and setting examples for so many other future generation. And the youth is really the power and the kind of key metric at this point globally, especially for India. I feel with obviously we know the stats and numbers, and the demographic window right now is the highest in India, where it's youth up to the age of 35, which is the maximum of the population, and that's like the demographic dividend we need to capture and get more people to do more of these kind of decision-making roles and dealing with what actually matters in whichever field. It doesn't have to be just this, and which is why I think setting an example and showing the way to people is so important right now.
I'll move on to a part of the conversation that is very much about reality in itself. That yes, people see you. The first introduction is that okay, yes, this, we usually introduce ourselves with what we do and our profession and all of that, but there's so much that people don't see, like all the behind the scenes. And you're somebody who's traveled so much, and I love that, you're all the fucking time you're just here or there, and it makes me happy because this is somebody who's achieving what they want, they're making a difference in the world, but they're not forgetting to live for themselves. Like it's a priority for you to explore yourself, have fun in life and all of that. And the last time we met, we were speaking something which was around this, the like challenges of this that people don't see. That everybody looks at your life and they're like, wow, man, she has it all. She's doing this, and this. But then when we're crying and when we're like figuring it out, that's the part that people don't see. And for me, it's important to bring that part out because I think that's like, of course, everything you see is real, but that's what makes a lot of, like your struggles, your down days actually help you rise up again. So I want you to talk about that, specifically in relation to, the whole thing that you said about immigration and, being an immigrant in first generation immigrant in a country like the UK, and how you still like, sort of carving out your identity here.
Absolutely. I think bang on, you've hit the nail on the head, because that actually has been the core part of building myself in this country. Of course, it has never been easy. Of course, it has had its own share of challenges. But what social media makes you believe that it's all bulletproof, it's all rosy rainbows, unicorns and butterflies. It's not that in reality. And as much as I love my traveling and kind of venturing and kind of being adventurous and doing new things, that's all the sunshine days. And just like any normal human being, I have had my fair share of struggles and challenges that I've had to push myself through and still continue with building the life that I want to build for myself. And especially as an immigrant, and like I said, when you haven't seen anyone doing this thing before you, it comes with its own set of kind of anxiousness and uncertainty, because you tend to question yourself every day, like, why am I doing this? What am I trying to get out of this? Is it worth like staying away from family for so long and just getting that one chance in the year to go back home and spend time with your pet, your family, your friends, who are actually, you know, the most important people in my life, but I don't get to see them as often as I would like to see. And that has its own kind of toil on your mental health and stability, and you just kind of keep questioning everything. So, and especially I think when I first kind of transitioned into the career field or phase of my life coming out of academics, that itself has a whole lot of challenges in itself, because it's my first job and it's the first time that I'm not studying anymore and things are real and reality hits you with all its in all its true colors. And then when you're working in a setting where you don't see people like you and it's all people of different language, well, not, you know what I mean, culture and community, there's a lot of adjustments that I had to make to be able to get myself heard and visible in that setting. Because if I don't take myself seriously, if I don't give a chance for myself to be taken seriously, no one else is going to take me seriously. And I hadn't realized that at that point, because I was 22 when I started working, so young and naive and no experience, and trying to do something new and as part of a new department. And this was like post Brexit, so everyone was new to the work. That was in some ways, I guess, a good thing, because it's not just me who doesn't know what the work looked like at that stage. Everyone was trying to figure it out at the same time. But in terms of just kind of getting adjusted to all of that, it was a lot. It was overwhelming, to be honest, because I couldn't connect to them as just, I mean, forget about as work colleagues, but even outside work, just, trying to fit in every time, having those conversations over drinks. I just don't know how to participate in the conversations, because there's literally nothing common between them. They're talking about weekends where they're going fishing and hiking and doing things which I have never done back in my childhood days. And our interests are so dissimilar, and finding a commonality there was difficult. And and the way they treat you and approach you, it's like, also, how do you do it in India, and what's this festival about? And I felt like I was being quizzed on my kind of general knowledge of where I come from, and they were just trying to be sympathetic with me, because that's just what we could talk about, them trying to increase their knowledge maybe, and me trying to be quizzed about my own culture. So it just felt like a constantly trying to kind of translate my soul and trying to fit in, but it didn't seem to be working. And that's when I thought, I just want to give up and go back. I just can't do this. This is too much. It's as it is. There's this whole transition with work, and then there's like adjusting at a human level, which is just not happening. So it did take my toll. I had really bad days where I would sit and kind of cry and be like, it's lonely, and I didn't have anyone. I didn't have any friends at my age group, especially because I was in a part of the, let's say a town outside London, which was literally zero social life existence. And I tried to go out for events and networks, but couldn't find people in my age group. And although those were the difficult parts, I also had angels, like blessing, who came from God and kind of helped me and supported me through all the difficult times that I was going through. So I had this very kind gentleman from Australia who was my flatmate, and he had a daughter my age. So he was the kindest and most amazing human being I've met in my life. And till this date, I'm obviously still in touch with him, although I don't live in that town anymore. But the kind of emotional support that he gave me, just being there to listen to me, listening to me rant about all my office problems and troubles and visa issues and never-ending visa issues as an immigrant and all the paperwork, and that's a whole different challenge. I think we can record a different podcast on. So yeah, I did have angels who came in and helped me walk through those difficult parts when I didn't have my family around, I didn't have friends around, and all the friends that I knew from my academic life had obviously gone back to their respective countries. So it was about me starting from scratch and building those networks and connections from scratch. And then when I moved to London, obviously social life wise it was much better then, because I was meeting people more in this age group and I was building those connections and networks. And let's not take that for granted. That also doesn't come easy. Making friends from scratch now, after kind of coming out of academic life and outside of work, and maintaining those networks, even with friends who are back in India or in any part of the world, it takes effort, and it's effort on both sides. You will lose friends in the way, and that's difficult. But you move on, you make new friends as well, you get new angels as well, like I said, with these super kind human beings that come along and just make your life a little bit bearable, a little bit easy to walk through, and give you a new purpose, I think, on a daily basis, to strive through the difficult parts and give you hope that there is sunshine down the line, even if some days it's raining and you can't see the ray of hope on the horizon. But just holding your hand and being there when things get tough and giving you that hope is what has helped me survive.
That's amazing. That's amazing. What I want to pick up from the things that you said right now, which also very nicely segues into what I wanted to talk to you about, is your relationship with Lord Shiva. Okay. And it was very interesting for me to even think of this as something to talk about, because as a generation, I feel that collectively we are a bit dissociated with, our culture, history, and even the way we look at the world. Like, for example, I am non-religious. I don't necessarily believe that, okay, the way we follow in Indian culture, that yes, there's a God and a sort of superhuman and all. But yes, I would say I'm spiritual. So it depends on what your faith is. For you, it might be the exact same feeling that I feel, that okay, there's something bigger than you in the universe and all. But like collectively, I feel as a generation, we've sort of moved away from the idea that okay, yes, in a very sort of conservative context, that we believe in God per se and all of that. So with relation to that, I was very intrigued when I saw your interest in Shiva, because it's not just that oh yeah, I do have friends who are religious, and I do respect their faith, but this was coming from something that inspires me, which is like you've read a lot, you went into the literature to see that okay, what is it about, and faith is one different thing, but you also went into, I don't know if that was purposeful, thought of purpose, what's the word, on purpose, but consciously. But yeah, just basically learning more and understanding that okay, yes, I believe in this faith. Uh, let's see what's into it, sort of a thing. So, what is that like? What has that journey been like? What's your relationship with Lord Shiva like?
Yeah. Oh my God. I must say, I love that question you've chosen. No one has ever asked me that before. So, thank you firstly for asking, because that does make me kind of introspect myself and kind of reflect on where it all started. I think, to be very honest, in this kind of turmoil of changes that my life has been, just not in terms of kind of setting, environment, and friends and networks and everything that I've gone through all these years, Shiva has been my constant throughout. He is my anchor. He is the anchor that keeps me rooted through all the ups and downs of life. So even when I'm having the best day and best achievement, I know it's transitory. So I don't let it affect me. So I can keep myself grounded because of him. I just focusing on the power that Shiva is,
Yeah.
and just reflecting on his magnanimity
Yeah.
helps me keep myself grounded.
Yeah.
And then also on all the low days and the difficult days where I've struggled, in whichever way, where just kind of meeting a failure in whatever aspect where I'm working towards a goal and it doesn't happen, some prayer doesn't get answered or the dream isn't fulfilled, reaffirming myself and having that faith and knowing that if something is not worked out, I know Shiva will take care of it. There's a reason that it hasn't happened. There's something better waiting for me after this. And I wouldn't know the answer for it, but I trust that he can see the bigger picture of my life. He can see the larger scheme of things. And he can see the route that I'm going and why that makes sense for me. I can't see that, but I'm just going to trust him and believe in him that he can see it and he's going to guide me through the right path. And this, it's inexplicable where that faith comes from, or how I find it kind of easier to connect or just kind of trust him when I'm going through these highs and lows. But time and again, he it has been repeated in my life in terms of his presence and the fact that he is taking care of everything, and that whatever it is, whether it's a good moment or a really sad moment, it's all transitory, and that it will pass. So just celebrate the good moments when it's there. Just kind of cry through the bad moments when it's happening, but know that you will come out of all of it, whether stronger or weaker, or just trying to find a new way and finding the strength to walk through a new way. And for me, it all started with Shiva. I think, again, very naturally as a child. I was probably less than 10-year-old when I just started worshipping, and I am into idol worshipping as well. So just with Shiva in Hinduism, where we offer water to the Shivling every day after a bath and before my meals. And no one told me to do that. I've not seen my parents doing that. It's just something I've picked up naturally. So that's why I say, I feel like I'm naturally, I've always been connected to him. I haven't seen that in any movie or anything. It just started naturally, and a practice that I've just followed very religiously throughout my life while I was at home. And then when I moved outside of home, obviously I couldn't continue the kind of physical ritual of the thing. But what I still continue to do till this day is pray. I think the first thing in the morning is just waking up to Om Namah Shivaya. It's a very powerful thing that I can start my day with and also end my day with, to leave behind all the negative energy that I have gathered throughout the day from different sources and different channels, and leaving that outside my mind, draining myself of that negative energy, because your mental peace is everything. It's on top of everything. And for me to be able to do that is to repeat to myself Om Namah Shivaya. So Namah Shivaya are the 5 elements of the universe. It's the earth, water, fire, all of that combined. So the moment you repeat that to yourself, you're grounding your energies and you are leaving everything to Shiva, for Shiva to take care of. And you just focus on Shiva and kind of have that anchor in yourself to believe and reaffirm your faith that I've left everything to him and now I can rest in peace, relax, do your own thing and not worry about everything. Of course, not every day is the same, but reminding myself of his presence in my life and whatever I have today is because of him. And I think it's just his blessings where I have come so far and how I've managed to reach so far and how I've kind of struggled and still survived and found the resilience and the strength when I didn't know I could do that. Is all something that I can't explain, but it's just that power that I cannot define in any way. I just know it's there. And that's the beauty of Shiva.
Yeah, it made me very curious because, as I was saying that we're so dissociated and all, but like everybody you speak to, I think even personally, I'm at that point that, like I would like to surrender to something. Like, I would like to believe that there's somebody out there taking care of you. Usually growing up with your parents and all of that, and then, like you have your teenage years, you go like, oh, I'm an atheist because it sounds cool and all of that, but then like slowly even the younger generation, like the Gen Z's call it what do you manifestation, and the power of the universe. So the concept is the same. That, like you're doing your best, and at one point you're like, okay, the universe will take care of me, and I'm a blessed bitch, and all of that. So, so I mean, yeah, it was very interesting that it's the same concept, but then this person is going this path, like you can choose whatever path. So that is the reason I wanted to sort of bring that up, because yes, I also believe that fundamentally, like to survive, to have like that ray of hope, because as you said in the conversation several times, that it does get lonely, so that surrender, that amount of ultimate faith that like it does not matter, not everything can be under my control. I think it's also very grounding in the sense that no matter who you become, and like you can be achieving the best of things and all of that, but then you always know that there's something bigger than you out there. And so
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I've read books of both sides, the Western concept of the law of attraction and the universe and how those things manifest. And then I've also read a simplified version of the Gita. I've still not found, I would say, the skill to go through the actual Gita text, but a lot of translations of the Gita to help me decipher what the Gita's message is and all of that. Just again, out of interest, not so much that I'm kind of a very religious person, or like I just my all the kind of deities and everything is do or die situation, but more importantly, out of kind of that curiosity and interest as to where did all of this originate? What's the source? What's the kind of X number of years back, centuries back? What was it that people at that time were trying to say to us? So, having read both sides, what like you said, the concept is the same, but I feel like the Western world has obviously, I think this is my hypothesis, has stolen some of the kind of origins of what Hinduism has always tried to tell us in India in form of our source texts and the Gitas and the Vedas. And that's because the law of attraction in the Western concept defines it as a kind of source that you just trust, you leave it, like you said, a similar concept. But that was always existent in our Indian knowledge and our Indian scriptures. It's just that we never valued it, we never read about it, we are less informed, we never maybe found the interest in kind of digging into the literature and trying to see what we already knew 1,000 years back before the concept of universe came in vogue, and now it's a millennial or Gen Z thing. It was much before that we kind of came up with this concept. And with all due respect, people can have their own opinions and beliefs. You can choose to believe in religion or not choose to believe. That's fine. But even what the concept of law of attraction tries to tell you is that once you've asked for something, you really need to have that undying faith and selfless belief that it's going to happen. So whether that makes it happen for you by believing in the universe or by believing in Shivji, that's up to you. You choose your medium. But the concept is the same. In the Western world, they probably don't know or don't want to believe in the concept of a God. So they've created something called a universe to make it apply some more sense to it. But for us, it's the gods that we have always known about and what we choose to believe in. So yeah, ultimately, bottom line is whatever works for you, do it. But I would say it's good to have some belief in something, because at the end of the day, these things keep us grounded. And when everything is working your way or when everything's falling apart, you need that source of kind of anchor or a fixed thing that keeps you grounded and makes you believe that stick to the ground, because you can't fly, you can't sink. You need to be in a balanced state of mind, and that balance comes by believing in constant that helps you float.
And thank you for answering that so beautifully, even though I was not able to formulate my question very well. But this is exactly what I wanted to bring out, that now we're exposed to both Eastern and Western philosophies, concepts, and it's not coming from a place of just blind faith and belief. It's like, you've tried this, you've adopted a way of living and read about it, and also read about the other alternate, like samey concept, like it's the same, so I'll choose which path sort of make sense. So yes, thank you for sort of bringing that out so beautifully. I know a lot of people are gonna be interested just in this bit, because I think we all think, like because personally for me, I feel I'm in that phase where I'm curious about so many things that as a kid we didn't pay attention to. Like growing up, like in my teenage years, like I said, that okay, faith and all is like, yeah, bullshit and all, but like as you're moving forward in life, you go back to your roots and you look behind a lot, because I was reading this or I heard somebody say it, but it's so interesting that when you look forward and everything's obscure, you can't really look forward and plan and all. You have to look back to connect the dots and then take inspiration and move forward. So yes, that's been very insightful.
I'm glad. Yeah. And I think we all just kind of learn from our respective lessons in life. There's no one size fits all solution for anyone. We find what works for us and then try and stick to it. I think that's the real challenge. I think realizing what works for you is great, but trying to implement that in practice and sticking through it in the highs and lows is difficult. I 100%, even though I'm a big Shiv bhakt and I have my own ideologies of what I choose to believe in, but reminding yourself of these things at the right moment is the key. But once you, I guess, manage to develop that habit and keep that as a constant, things become easier eventually.
Okay, interesting. Just a fun question. What is something that you've read in literature or found through research that people don't really associate with the notion of Shiva, or something you found as a fun fact that, oh, do you know this about, like, because you've read like the trilogy and I saw your post with Amish Tripathi and that, so I was like, there definitely has to be something in that, volume of books which gives you more knowledge about,
Yeah.
say, the myth of someone, or what something is or someone is. So
I think the interesting thing about Shiva is he has so many versions and like stories about him, especially when you start digging into the literature, just viewing kind of programs or movies or videos on him, kind of becomes hard to pick and choose. Um, you know, the fact that kind of sticks through or kind of makes sense to you, and again, hard to say how much of this is actually kind of true or like it's just fables to kind of make human beings draw a lesson out of it. So I try to kind of discard some pieces of information which doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would a god do this? Like, I think when you think of God, you think of someone who's balanced and is giving you the message of having your emotions in control and all your vices under control. But then they also show this version of Shiva where he's full of wrath and he's like bringing the world to an end, and yeah, he's the destroyer the destroyer of evil actually. So in that way we worship him because he keeps you away from all danger and he protects you from all evil. So that is a thing I found quite interesting, that when you think of Shiva, there are two versions of him, at least in my head, where he's sitting on top of this ice cold mountain in peace and just meditating, and then nothing in this world can destroy his peace and level of calm. But then there's also this version of him where he's destroying the whole world out of his anger, and then so I kind of find it quite difficult to sustain the two versions of him together in my head. But having read the different fables associated with these different stories has made me realize that this is probably different instincts where he had to take that kind of a sort of negative version he had to adopt to convey a certain message to society, that if you stray from the path of truth or righteousness or the kind of morally defined good path, then he is going to come to show you that version of him, to maybe, I don't know, to instill the fear. Maybe that was one way probably sages want to build that fear in society and be like, oh, you have to be good, otherwise you're going to see this version of God and make God angry. Maybe that's why it's kind of way of policing. I think I would look at it that way. But regardless, I think what's important is drawing the moral out of it and trying to understand why that different version of him exists, and trying to connect yourself more to what he stands for. It's the peace, the tranquility, and just that serenity is when I kind of envision his version of kind of sitting at Kailash and meditating is the ultimate state of peace that I think we all want to strive towards and sustain in our lives. So it's just that part what I choose to connect to. But in terms of having read books of Shiva Trilogy by Amish Tripathi, and I've obviously been fortunate enough to meet him, and I completely and I've met him like quite a few times now, and every time I met him, it was not planned. I didn't know he was going to be there. It was just coincidence and an absolute chance, and I again think it's been Shiva who's made that moment happen. And he's a big Shiv bhakt, and I remember when I went up to Amish Tripathi the first time I met him earlier this year, and I just started blabbering and saying, oh yeah, this is me, and I was introducing as if he's interested in who I am and what I want to do. But I think after probably a few seconds, when it slipped out of my mouth and I said, I'm a big Shiv bhakt and I've read your books, his attention just turned and he was like, oh, okay, and he just folded his hands, and then I had captured his attention, and then he was like, okay, introduce yourself. So what do you do exactly? So I think it was just magic the way we connected, and I'm really fortunate to have got like signed books and all of that. But what he wrote was fictional to a large extent. But even then, as a Shiv Bhakt, it was an absolute joy to read so much about Shiva, so many undiscovered truths and versions of him that I hadn't known before. And I've like gone through so many of his kind of interviews with Tripathi's, and he did mention that it's a kind of an inexplicable energy for him as well when he first started drafting the Shiva trilogy. He just doesn't know, like the flow just comes when he started writing, and it's just like a power that comes through you and makes it happen. And I think that's the magic of Shiva.
Amazing. Very cool, man. So there's one thing that it's sort of a different conversation, but I want to sort of wrap everything together to understand what lies ahead for Koyesha and what the future holds, which is sort of an amalgamation of everything that we've spoken so far. And of course, you are big into literature. You've been somebody who writes really well, and you mentioned that you're working on a book, or you do want to start working on a book. And what's that going to be about?
Wow, yeah. I think the future is the most difficult bit, isn't it? I can say what I want to right now, but who knows if that's going to come true. But we all live with hope. We all have a dream, and I've always been a dreamer. I always have liked to work towards what really keeps me alive, makes me feel alive, and I think writing has also again been one of those constants that gives me an outlet of expression. More than my words could do justice. I've always been more of a writer than a talker. A book has always been in the works. I've just, with life and with work, it hasn't come around being kind of manifested yet. But I think in terms of the kind of immediate future, that's one thing that I really want to focus on and get that book in shape and get that published and make it happen. What it's going to be about, it's going to be, I think at this stage, kind of glimpses of my kind of lessons drawn from my own experiences in life. But I'm not that kind of person who wants to talk a lot about myself and kind of make it all about myself. So it's going to be, I look at it in a way to be kind of combined with fiction and kind of make it a good story which hopefully a lot of people would connect to. So let's see what it turns out to be like. I think, you would know what a writer's journey looks like. You envision something when you start with writing, but then it turns out to be something else by the time you finish writing. So I'm pretty sure we will find out only later what it ultimately looks like. But in terms of next steps, obviously I'm grateful for all the lessons I've learned so far from my career journey, and hopefully continue to set a good example for other young leaders who will want to choose this path. I'm always very happy to kind of be that person who shares examples and leaf from my book. But in terms of going ahead, I definitely have dreams of kind of doing something more, and like I said, my natural kind of instincts of kind of contributing something more to society and the world, and using those natural kind of leadership instincts to make a difference. is the kind of path I want to work towards. What that looks like in practice is going to be something I'm going to discover myself. But as with everything else in my life so far, with the blessings of Lord Shiva and the support of all my family and close friends, I'm sure I'll find that way and hopefully be back for a next podcast with you in future to share more of that.
100%. Koyesha, I could go on speaking to you because there's so much that I learn from you every time we speak. But I think in the interest of time, we have to sort of wrap this up. So, but I just don't wanna.
I know. And it's such a beautiful
Yeah,
day
it's
as
a
well
beautiful
today to
day,
sit
yeah.
outside and chat.
Yeah. So, but I just want to ask you before we close this conversation that is there anything that you think is important that you would like to bring out in this conversation? Of course, like there's so much we can keep talking about, but just before we wrap up, if you think I've missed something that you would really want to put out there.
Summarizing an hour of conversation in a minute, I think the key message really that comes out of our conversation today is the fact that to be alive and to feel alive, the first step is really to self introspect and identify where your passion and interests lie. And then just forging ahead, regardless of what people around you tell you, whether you can do or cannot do, should be defined by your strengths and what you believe in and how you choose to believe in, whether that's through Shiva or through the universe or whatever, not believing in anything if you are strong enough to do that, but just forging ahead despite the odds and the challenges and believing that what you are doing will have an outcome that sets an example for others in the future. And then also being a risk taker in some aspects, and even when in some cases you're choosing to do something new and you don't know where it's leading, having the faith in yourself more than anything else, whether more than any god or like any aspect that you choose to believe in, believing in your skills because no one knows you better than yourself, and unless you believe in yourself, you can't make the world believe in you. So going ahead with that strength and confidence and risk, it makes the risk worth it at the end of the day. Because even if you fail, you blame yourself. And worst comes to worst, you just learn a lesson and move on and try something new. It's not the end of the world. And believing that every rainy day has also a sunny day ahead of it is what keeps you going on a daily basis, I think. And yeah, just being resilient and really just working towards what you believe in and making those dreams come true.
Amazing. Koyesha, thank you so much for being on By the Rules. Thank you so much for giving me this interview. And I know that a lot of people from school, from Jamshedpur, our old friends are going to be listening to this. And this is something that comes genuinely from the heart that I want to, say to you as a parting note that when we were growing up and, like you were this person who I would have seen in a very different light that yes, very hardworking, very resilient and all of that. But I'm so happy and proud to be able to see this other side of you, which is still, it has all those qualities which we saw growing up, but I see a new side of you that is such a force of change, a force of nature, who's so assertive in making a difference in the world and making a difference to people's lives and, just contributing at such a huge scale. So thank you so much. I think just listening to this conversation, people are going to get that out of you. And that's it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for having me, and honestly, all of those words mean so much to me.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we are here after all these years, after a decade, having this conveation, sitting at such a scenic location in London, and it's been an absolute joy.
Actually, there's a pre-wedding also happening.
Wow, that's amazing! What a perfect time. See, talk about coincidence and timing. But yeah, I'm so glad with all the amazing work that you continue to do, and I wish you good luck with the purpose of these podcasts. And I hope through mediums like this is where we continue to make a difference in society and to people's lives.
女生看右边，男生回另外一边。